morning. The landscape of our region looks much different today than it did 10 years ago. We've seen new business announcements and existing industry expansions. New businesses have popped up along our main streets to enhance our community personality and vibrancy. Our cities and towns resonate with sounds of children playing, feet running, and bikes buzzing. And this is a result of investments that have been made to expand our green space and recreational amenities across our county. Passionate citizens have rallied to raise significant funds to contribute to livability in the form of murals, public art, or iconic places. Business parks have been established. Tired and vacant industrial spaces have been reinvented into points of pride. Our downtown districts have become spaces of belonging and gathering. Although I know the work isn't done, the growth and progress is evident. All of these improvements are a byproduct of investment, public investment and private investment. A community that invests in itself and casts a vision for growth is a community worthy, and it's attractive to private investment. This morning, you're going to hear firsthand from 3 local leaders whose stories make that statement real. This will be a panel discussion moderated by Lindsay Keisler, the Chamber President and CEO. Lindsay, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce the panelists.
Thank you, Karen. It is truly my privilege and honor to moderate this panel of entrepreneurs and founders in our community. If you don't invest in yourself, how can you expect others to invest in you? This statement seems to be a central focal point and also rallying cry of our community over the last decade. Local government leaders have taken this statement seriously. And as Karen stated so well in the intro, our landscape is ever evolving. You look around and we look very different from what we did 10 years ago. These enhancements are critical to business growth and competitive success. It's essential for our businesses to be able to attract and retain the talent that they need. And additionally, it's spurred additional private investment from our local entrepreneurs and founders. So today, I want you to hear from their point of view. I want you to hear from the founders' point of view. If you've come to many summits over the last several years, you've heard about our Hickory Trail projects and the bond projects. You've heard about the streetscapes improvements, but you haven't necessarily heard the result of the yield from that public investment. So today I want you to hear that perspective. You know, the vision that's been casted and the public investment that's been made, whether it's a downtown streetscapes improvements, like it's been in the city of Newton and Conover and really all over the county, but also infill redevelopment. And like I mentioned, the Hickory Bond projects, which we're going to get into a little bit more later in the discussion. Green and recreational space expansions and enhancements. All of these things are critical to creating a space where people want to live, work, learn, worship. This is important. So today, my guests know this statement very intimately and personally, that if you don't invest in yourself, how can you expect others to invest? Or the opposite is, if you invest in yourself, you can expect others to invest in you. And that's what our panelists today have done. They have made some significant investments across our county, and I'm excited for you to hear more about their story and what makes it unique. So Jeff Allen, co-founder of Novel Taproom, is on with me today. Roger Young, the president of David E. Looper and Company, and Andrew Durstewitz, CEO and co-founder of Community Brewing Ventures and D9 Brewing Company. So welcome to all of you, gentlemen. Thank you again for being here. And I'd like for you to give a little bit more professional context and any additional things you'd like to share with our audience today, just to kick us off. So Jeff, why don't you go first?
Great, thanks, Lindsay. Appreciate you having me on today. I grew up in Newton. I'm a local guy, and I'm now back in Newton. But for the last 40 years, I was in Charlotte. So after graduating from Newton Conover, I went to UNCC. Met my wife my freshman year there, got married, raised 2 kids, and had a career down there primarily in the automation world, doing different things, but for the most part, working in automation for public and academic libraries. Covered most of the East Coast of the United States, so I traveled a lot, and you know, really honestly kind of got tired of the travel. And as we were looking at where to place this business, which I'll go into later, we wound up back in Newton, so it's great to be back home. And people always ask, how do we come up with the name Novel? That was really a shout out to my professional career in the automation world with academic and public libraries. So good to be back, and thanks again for having me on.
Thanks, Jeff. I always love a fellow 49er. So love that about Jeff. Also, his wife, Sandy, co-founder of Novel, but something that turned into spending time with his kids, a favorite pastime, now a second career for you. So thank you for that. If you haven't checked out Novel Taproom, I encourage you to go down and have a pint or two. All right, Roger, what about you? Welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on, Lindsay, and it's a pleasure to be here. My name's Roger Young. I am president of David E. Looper & Company, and we're a commercial general contractor based in Hickory, and we've got an office in Charleston as well. And I'm also president of Delco Partners, which is a commercial real estate and investment firm. Like Jeff, I am a native Catawba County son. I grew up in Hickory. After that, I went on to Wake Forest for college, and then moved to Raleigh and spent about 3 or 4 years in the construction business down there. And I've been back in Hickory almost 21 years. So fortunate to be back. I've got 4 children and a wife that I like. I am not in the beer business, so I am in the I'm in the minority in this panel, which is maybe fortunate or unfortunate. But anyway, I'm glad to be able to be on here, and I think it's a great topic to talk about. I think Catawba County, like I said, we cover about 9 or 10 states in the business that we're in, and just have found Catawba County to be a good place to work. I had this conversation with some folks not long ago and you mentioned a lot of the things that from a municipal standpoint and a community, I'd call it working in concert with one another between the walks and the greenways and the investment in the infrastructure have allowed for continued investment by private entities here, but it's also Catawba County is a pro-business. The municipalities within Catawba County are pro-business, and it's a good building inspections department to work with. The folks in the Diener office are good to work with. I can tell you that we go places where they are not business friendly, and this is certainly not one of those places. They certainly want to see things work out for everybody involved, and we're fortunate enough to be able to work in that arena. So thank you again, and appreciate what you're doing here today.
Thanks, Roger. And just a shout out to our Land Use Development Board. As Roger mentioned, the fact that Catawba County is business friendly, has a reputation of being business friendly, has a lot to do in part by this group that meets on a regular basis between the realtors, the home builders, also our business community, in addition to all of our county and municipal planners, to regularly review our land use ordinances and these procedures to ensure that they remain business friendly. So thanks for pointing that out. All right, Andrew Durstewitz. Andrew, you may have not had a chance to meet Andrew yet, but I'm sure you will very soon in person, hopefully. But D9 Brewing. So Andrew, welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on here. It's always a pleasure. So a little bit of background about me. I am actually a native New Yorker. I've traveled most of this country for different parts of my career, and then settled into North Carolina about 18 years ago. And I've always said that they'll have to pry me out of this state, because I out of all states that I've been in, this is my favorite state. So about, I guess, almost 20 years ago now, I started my career in IT. I have an IT background, hence, a lot of the way I approach business. I spent 10 years in human capital research. About 2 of those years were spent in cognitive psychology. Left that organization and worked with some of my friends to help start a voice recognition company. They were under this new thing, voice recognition. And, we were still on flip phones. We didn't even think that stuff was going to work out the way it did. But we ended up selling that company to Amazon. So that's now Alexa. And I went off back into, I guess, the quasi-private world and spent the last 5 years of my technology career at TIA-CREF as an architect on a massive global high availability project. So a lot of my background, obviously data science and whatnot, has always been based upon transformation projects. So I think of the world in terms of, okay, we are at A, how do we get to B? What kind of was gnawing away at me was just the idea that I was doing all these big projects, spending all this time on airplanes, that I didn't really know my community, and that was really starting to bug me. So about 6-7 years ago, I pulled the ejection handle and went out and started a business of my own in the beer business, which I had never done before. But I thought, hey, why not? This will be fun.
Oh, that's great. So Alexa meets the home of Siri. So how's that working out, right?
You have to ask me another time which ones I actually have.
My goodness. All right. Thank you, Andrew. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for being on here today. So I've got a couple of the questions for you just to help spur discussion. So let's talk to Jeff and Andrew first. So since 2015, over 200 million in private investment has been made in Newton proper. As you all know, they have made significant investment in their downtown with some streetscape improvements. If you haven't been down there, it's really transformed and very, very beautiful, that historic courthouse square. So Jeff, in hearing the statement that I mentioned earlier, public investment yields private investment, do you agree? So tell us a little bit about your story and how it relates to that.
Yeah, I was talking about that from the very beginning. All my friends from Charlotte were like, "You're moving where and why?" And being from Newton, I never considered Newton. That was not on the radar. I was looking for places in Charlotte, around Charlotte, giving the cost of real estate in those areas. It kept pushing me further and further out, and literally was having lunch in Newton and I thought they had burst a water main or something. And that was actually the first phase of streetscape, and started digging around and finding out what they were doing. I was like, this isn't the Newton that I remember. And it struck me that Newton is finally making an investment in itself. And I want to be a part of a town that's investing in itself. Otherwise, why would I? If they're not willing to take, if they're not going to invest in themselves, why would I want to invest there? And I saw what they were doing, and it was very impressive. And that, that lunch literally sparked novel. It all happened right there, and just hearing about this streetscape project, and then obviously digging further down and seeing what all was happening in the city and around the city. But yeah, that investment was a big deal.
So Jeff, talk a little bit about what you did. So you, from that lunch then forward, Novel came to be after some time. So talk about, finding the building and really the concept of what you wanted to create. Yeah,
well, a good friend of mine who happened to be a neighbor of my mom and dad, who still had been living in Newton at that time, was an attorney in Hickory. And so after that lunch, actually at that lunch, before I left, I called her and said, I am here in Newton having lunch, and I'm hearing all these things. Tell me more. And she started telling me, about what Newton was up to, what they were doing. And I said, do you have a few minutes? And she said, sure. And I literally left that lunch, drove to her office in Hickory, and we spent a good bit of the rest of the afternoon talking about available properties in downtown. She's pretty plugged in. She was a building owner as well. And she said, the city's actually has a building that they've been wanting a brewery or a tap room or something like that to be put into. And so she put me in touch with the city planner and someone with the DNDA in Newton. And so that started a conversation where we started looking at available properties. And I was just very, very fortunate to wind up in a building that at that time wasn't even available. It wasn't for sale. So through some persistence, we were able to obtain the building that we're in now. and are absolutely thrilled about it. So it all started from that lunch and seeing the construction crews there on Main Street. That was everything. So, I then started pursuing Newton.
That's interesting. And like you, Jeff, now with the extension or we're going to complete 16. I believe the statistic is it's faster to get to Charlotte from Newton than it is from Matthews. So, and vice versa, the other way. We're going to start to see more of that. And like you said, your friends that weren't considering this community ever before, maybe will turn some heads. Thank you for sharing that story. Talk a little bit too about the idea of creating a destination. Yeah.
So, I've had this concept. I've been looking at doing this for 8 years. This isn't something that we just wanted to do in the last year or two. I've been wanting to do this for 8 years. I've been doing my homework for 8 years. I knew what I was getting into. I knew what I wanted, and I was going to hold firm to that. And I wanted to create something that was special and regional. I wanted a place that was going to be an awesome place that happened to be in Newton, not a place that was a cool place for Newton. It just happens to be in Newton, but I wanted it to be a regional attraction. And some of the events that we've been doing has proven that out. We regularly draw people from 7 to 8 counties on any given weekend. And we know that because we talk to everybody that walks in the door and we find out where they're from, and data backs that up. So we had a regional approach from the beginning. This was not going to be a local establishment in Newton or for Newton. It just happened to be in Newton, but we wanted to reach Charlotte, Asheville. We're right in between the two, so we have a pretty big reach. So we've been able to accomplish that to this point, at least, of thinking bigger and not thinking local.
That's great. Thank you, Jeff. Andrew, your story is similar but different. You're in scale grow mode for D9 Brewing, but you could have expanded your operations to anywhere, but you chose Newton. If you want to speak a little bit about that and make sure you're off mute. There you are.
Yeah, there was some noise in the background. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a really interesting story how Newton came up. As I mentioned, I've lived in North Carolina. I live in Lake Norman area for 18 years now. And when the idea of Newton was proposed to me, I actually had to go look up where it was. And I was told, oh, it's right outside of Hickory, and I'm like, oh, that town on the way to Asheville. It's like I had not been there, and so I had a local advocate that we all know very well in my ear telling me, oh no, these guys are putting huge dollars into this small town, and I honestly just couldn't believe it because North Carolina is full of these beautiful towns, but I don't see a lot of them investing in themselves. They're kind of stuck. I think somebody referred to it as the 1940s yesterday in a conversation. They get stuck back in that time. And a community, for me, it's much bigger and much more than just a place where people live. A community has to have, vibrant housing. It has to have a vibrant economic growth engine. And the only way that private businesses really invest in an area is, as you said, if the area invests in itself. When I was brought up to Newton, the first thing, shown some buildings, kind of similar story as Jeff. But as soon as I got out of the car, I just started walking because I wanted to understand what all these backhoes and trucks were doing, tearing apart the downtown. And I was just amazed. And not only the work and investment dollars that they put into, beautifying the city and trying to create, or let me say, facilitate the community engagement so that there was an opportunity for private businesses to come in and be able to build on what was built. I was really surprised at. And then even so far as the city of Newton had preemptively gone and started changing a lot of their zoning, their jurisdictions, their there are rules to benefit businesses, because that's a whole nother thing. Because, you know, as soon as I got into the town, I was like, okay, this is really great. This is really exciting. Do I have 10 years of standing in front of your local councils trying to explain how I have to do my business? Because, you know, we are in the business of beer. And so there's a lot of old rules out there. No, the city of Newton was ahead of that. They planned for that. They were modernizing very quickly. And I was blown away. And even to the point of the day that I sat down and signed everything, I looked to my wife and I asked her, I was like, are we doing the right thing? Because I just cannot even possibly believe that I'm doing this in the city of Newton. And now we've gone from a very ideal location. Jeff has proven the market in a way that I didn't even think was possible. And now we just signed our second lease in the city of Newton. So not only do we have, you know, the old firehouse that we're converting to an R&D brewery, we have a 30,000 square foot, you know, cold storage distribution center a mile down the road on Main Street, you know. So we now have people moving from around the state and actually from around the country. We've had 2 employees move to the city of Newton in order to work for D9 and Community Brewing Ventures. So you can start to see it. I think it's been funny that it's all happened in such a short period of time. And it's been really cool being next door neighbors with Jeff, because, you know, not only can we share a beer over our ideas, it's starting to build up as this this economic center, which I think is going to create an engaged and actionable community for the city of Newton.
You said many different great nuggets there. I appreciate that story. One I want to pull out, just since we're in front of, you know, an audience of 500 plus business and community leaders, is that key, that catalyst was the community advocate, which is Luke Walling. A lot of us know Luke Walling. Luke talks about our community all over, everywhere he goes. He's talking about, first of all, he's talking about beer, but second of all, he's talking about our community. And that's all of us, right? We have to be advocates for our own community. We have to talk about the great things that are happening, the growth that we're experiencing. Even amidst a global pandemic, we're still seeing growth and construction and cranes and backhoes, as you mentioned, all over this community. So there's good, and we've got to be the ones to tell it. We've got to be the ones that tell it. Even 45 miles down the road, they don't know where Newton or where Hickory, Conover, Catawba County is located. We have to tell that story, and there are many of you that are doing it. So I feel like I'm a little bit preaching to the choir here. So thank you for that, Andrew. All right, well, let's transition. I'd like to talk with Roger for a minute, but just to lead into this discussion, I want to give you a refresh. So back in 2015, you know, the city of Hickory passed an incredible $40 million bond referendum. This was something that we didn't think was possible, but the citizens said that we need to invest in ourselves. Since then, you know, you're starting to see the projects coming out of the ground, literally, but the city has leveraged those dollars for an additional $50 million in grant funds from the government. So you have $90 million that now are projects across the county, one being in a Class A industrial business park, Trivium Corporate Center. Others, of course, the City Walk, the River Walk, the downtown improvements. You've certainly seen Hickory change before your eyes. But even before completion, there's been $160 million in private investment that has been announced as a result of the Hickory Trails project alone. So just the projects that I mentioned previously. So 160 million, 15 million of that is accounted for in the One North Center project. So Roger is instrumental in making that investment. So Roger, talk about the One North Center project and really why did you decide to build or invest in residential, but also commercial and right in the epicenter of downtown Hickory?
Oh, that's a loaded question. It's been interesting to what Jeff and Andrew said, there were some things that resonated with me there. I continue to hear the word community, and I think and destination, and it's interesting to me that the ideologies of the three of us are very, very similar in the reasons why we did what we did in certain places. Hickory has always, and I'm going to say Catawba County across the board, has always been a great place for people to live. It's been a good place to grow up. You're 45 minutes in the mountains, you're 4 hours from the beach. You can get to Charlotte in 45 or 50 minutes. I mean, there's the connectivity to some great things and natural resources that we have. And it's always been a great place. You know, education's good. There's a lot of places to go to church. There's fun things to do. But we have struggled in the last, I'm going to call it 30 years, maybe 25, somewhere in that neighborhood, with attracting, I'm going to call it that 22 to 28-year-old demographic. And a lot of that has had to do with they've gone to live in Charleston, or they've gone to live in Raleigh, or they've gone to live in Charlotte or wherever. And one of the things that a lot of our clients have said through the years that we do commercial work for across the board, from industrial to office to medical, is they have a hard time attracting that talent level. So you see a lot of the people that the young kids, they come and they work in Catawba County, and they might buy lunch here, or they might have a cup of coffee, and then they drive and they live in Mooresville, and they live in Davidson, and they live in Cornelius, and they live in just different places. So when we saw that the city of Hickory was making an investment, it was something we had been looking at for quite some time. But when we saw that the City Walk was coming online, and a lot of the other pieces and parts that go along with the bond were going to happen, we really started looking at that center city. And our goal was to create a project that would have that really would create synergy in I'm going to call it Hickory proper, really right out, we're one block off Union Square. They've done some great work on Union Square. Again, to these guys' credit, and some of the restaurateurs and beer guys and bar owners that are up there, they've done a great job of creating an atmosphere where people want to come, and they've created that destination. Our goal was to be able to provide a facility. It's 95 units. There's about 8,500, 9,000 square feet of commercial space. But we wanted to create a building, and it's designed, the guys from Charlotte designed it, but you could take that building and you could drop it on Moorhead Street, or you could drop it in Dilworth, or you could drop it anywhere in down. It's the same exact amenity. It's got secure parking in it. It's got the fitness. It's got the concierge service. There's going to be a restaurant. There's going to be retail space in it, courtyard areas, parking deck. But it was a public-private partnership. It was on city land. There were some site components that had to be done by the city due to some soil conditions and so forth. But it was a partnership by the city of Hickory, but it fronts the City Walk. And it allows for, you've got that people that are going to be in and out. They're going to use the parking deck that's public. They're going to be able to come through the portal in the facility and walk onto the City Walk. And it's got that level of connectivity. And what we're really seeing is that it's creating an energy. There's other projects that are going on. There's other projects that are coming on the books that we're actually working on now that are a direct correlation to this project. And, the foresight of people, not just in the city of Hickory, or not just in Newton, but in Catawba County and in this area, to be able to look ahead and see, what we've seen in our business is right now, the secondary and tertiary markets, mainly in the Southeast, are really experiencing a significant boom, because you've seen a little bit of a build out in some of what I'm going to call the more urban markets. There's a little bit of saturation there. But this is going to create an area, we're going to see, we want to capture some of those young kids, because if they're here when they're 28, they're probably not leaving, because they're going to start getting married. They're going to start having kids. They're going to be ingrained in our community. And that's a cycle that we need to continue to propagate, because that's what's going to allow for that workforce to continue to grow. And having, facilities like what Jeff and Andrew have, we're providing a place for them to live. These guys are providing a place for them to go. They want to go. They want to be able to go down to the tap room. They want to be able to go out and hang out in a courtyard. They want to be able to listen to live music. It doesn't matter if you're in downtown Newton or downtown Charlotte or downtown Atlanta. It's the same basic concept. So we're providing the amenity and we're providing the facility that allows for folks to live here, which they want to live here anyway. Because nobody wants to spend 50 minutes in your car driving 4 miles to work every day when you can spend 4 minutes in your car driving 4 miles to work every day. And if you start looking at that, when employers are talking to people about their life, and you start adding up those minutes on a weekly basis of what kind of free time you've got, that you can go have a beer at one of these places, or you can hang out, and you can start making real sense and a real play for the quality of life that the Newtons and the Conovers and the Hickories can bring, just from a living standpoint. And I think that's where it's become a situation. I've heard this said in different adages over the last couple of years. Right now, with where the market is, and it's changed a little bit, but you can kind of live you can kind of work wherever you want to live. It used to be that you lived where you worked. I think that paradigm has shifted. And so, like I said, the facility that we're doing, it's to create that type of environment that's going to be inviting for people that want a little bit more of an urban living, but they want to do it in a smaller city or a smaller town than what you might see from say, a Charlotte.
Thank you, Roger. A nugget that you mentioned, you talked about vision and forecasting and forethought and planning. And, we're talking about a time span here of really 10 plus years. We're talking really about 15 years looking back, and how much it seems like it's gone in a wink, but how intentional planning starts now for 10 to 15 years down the road. So I really feel like even now, in this pandemic, I feel like we're at a tipping point in this community. Like I mentioned, we've got growth happening all around. We certainly still have a need for more housing in this community. And there are many other things in terms of attracting talent that our businesses need to be able to continue to sustain and grow. But I feel like we're at this tipping point. Our last community strategic plan and strategic visioning section was 2014. 2014. It's time for that again. And I hope I plan to convene our business community, local government, all the entities together, hopefully in the next year, that we can begin that process again. So talking about vision, you guys, you've heard a little bit about their story, audience. Thank you guys for hanging in with us. I want to hear your thoughts of what the next 5 to 10 years look like in this community, or what do you hope that they look like in terms of Catawba County and our greater region? Roger, why don't we start with you? We'll go in reverse order.
Thank you. I think you mentioned a couple key components. I think one of the things that we certainly need to see, and I think that we see officials in Catawba County moving toward this, we need to continue to see the single family housing built that's going to allow for continued growth. I think that's one area where we have lagged behind, but I think there are some strides that are being made there. I think continued investment, similar to the 3 projects that you're seeing now, I think you're going to continue to see growth in those sectors, not just in specifically in multifamily housing or in the brewing business, but just in things that are lifestyle based to an extent. I certainly think that I can speak specifically to the Riverwalk and Hickory. Lake Hickory's always been one of the resources that has been one of the most untapped resources, because if you didn't specifically live on the lake or have a boat, you didn't use it. So there's a creation of an amenity there that is going to certainly, I think, draw people from different places. But I think 5 to 10 years from now, you're going to see, and I'm kind of going back, I think Jeff had mentioned this earlier, he's going to see people, they're going to walk in and he's going to say, where are you from? And they're going to be, I'm from Belmont, or I'm from Concord. Well, what are you doing? Well, we just came up for the weekend. We're hanging out. We're riding bikes on Saturday and we wanted to have a beer, here, and we're doing it. I mean, I think you're going to see more and more of that does create that destination. But I think it's going to continue to be a livable area. I do think that Catawba County, I think that we're going to continue to have to put a significant emphasis on education. I think we've got to continue to improve our educational facilities. I think we've got to continue to be able to, that's certainly a huge caveat to being able to attract people to come live, because we're not the only people in Western North Carolina that are doing what we're doing. As I said, you're seeing this in a lot of the secondary and tertiary markets, particularly in the Southeast, but we've got to continue to improve all aspects. And I think the infrastructure improvements that we've seen, an emphasis on education, those are things that are going to continue to drive people moving here. But I do expect to see growth in this community. I think that we are in a region of the country that will continue to see fairly sustained growth. But I think it's bright. I think there's decisions that need to be made, and I certainly think there's planning that needs to be done. So I'm glad to hear you say that we're looking down the line, because what we see in Greenville today was conversations that happened 22 or 23 years ago, and we see where they are today. And I don't think we missed the boat. I don't think we're behind. I think we're in our part of the curve, and I think we just need to take advantage of the opportunities that we have right now and continue to improve where we all live.
Thank you, Roger. What about you, Andrew?
Saying, I think a similar story, but without the crystal ball, I can go from the standpoint and say, what is needed, what we're betting on is that, city and local governments are going to continue to invest. That is the gamble that I took with our business in moving it to the area. And I'm betting that, that there will be housing. I know that even over in the city of Newton, that's still a struggle right now. As I've run into, people trying to move to town and they're struggling to find a place to move to. So what we need just in the businesses that are there, and I think you're just going to get this push more and more because the success is going to create more success, and there's going to be more demand for those resources. So if we're bringing in people that can work from home, and trust me, I know the 52-minute drive that it takes to get here from Lake Norman, but when I'm at the Charlotte airport, it's 25 minutes to get here. It blows my mind. But, I think, especially with the decentralization of the workforce, you're going to get that a lot more. And we need access to talented people that are skilled and have a place to live and can be in the area. So a lot of what Roger said, I'm just turning it around to just simply say, what you guys are doing, there has to be a lot more of, because it's going to be what allows us to grow, and it's what's going to get more private investment from businesses like us.
Thank you, Andrew. All right, Jeff, 5 to 10 years, what does it look like?
Yeah, it's so fun because Novel has become kinda like a community gathering spot. People who come into town will come in and they'll strike up a conversation, and they'll, what's new? Are they in town? They're looking for, they're looking around. They're looking to move away from Charlotte. They're looking to move away from somewhere, and they're asking questions about places to live. So both of these guys have hit on housing. Housing is obviously very important all over Newton, but we see a lot of folks interested in downtown housing. And whether it's on the square or somewhere nearby, I think we should tap into something that's kind of unique to Newton as well. And that is, we've got a ton of golf carts. Newton is a uniquely walkable little town. Whether you're on the South College, South Main part of Newton, or up around the 6th, 7th, 8th Street, there are a large part of the population is walking distance or golf cart ride into town. And we even have golf cart specific parking spots on the square in downtown. So I would like to see us tap into that demand and really, really focus on maybe some mixed use live work space in downtown. Andrew, where Andrew lives, is a uniquely walkable town as well in the Lake Norman area. And I think we have the potential to really piggyback on that, like at Belmont. And Newton has the potential to do that. And I would love for us to tap into that demand and that need. So that's where I would love for us to be in 5 years or 10 years.
Thank you, gentlemen. I want to express my sincere appreciation for your time today, for joining me and 500 plus of our friends across the community. You know, I want to emphasize this again. It's simply a mere sampling of the investment that's been made all across our county. I could have easily selected founders in Claremont and Conover, in Maiden, as well to add to this discussion. But City of Newton and City of Hickory, these are great case studies of what is happening and occurring. I want to also mention our secret sauce as a community, and Roger talked about it. It's partnership and collaboration. I think these conversations are critical to hear business insight and what you need to continue to lean in and grow and to continue to expand in the future. So we need government and we need business and we need nonprofits, we need education all working together to create a unified vision looking forward. So yes, 2021, I'd love for that to be a vision year for our community. It's definitely needed. And I look forward to working with all of the entities to really create something that we can all rally behind going into the next decade or next 15 years. So again, as we conclude, I really want to thank all of you for being in attendance today. I want to thank you for being interested in the future of this community. And all of us, again, going back to being our own advocates, we are the mouthpiece for our community. We not only invest dollars, but we also can ensure that other people know the great things that are going on all across our community. So I encourage you to actively engage in these sessions. So use that lobby chat room, use the chat room that's in your main stage to converse with one another. If you hear something you like in any of these sessions, I hope that you'll give us some feedback and leave us some comments. These gentlemen, like I mentioned, their full bios are in your digital program that's located on your conference dashboard. But I'm sure they would be open to communicating with you one-on-one as well, if you'd like to talk about their projects or anything that you're interested in doing and leveraging their experience in that way. So thank you again, guys, for being here. And to introduce our next session, I want you to please welcome Gloria Lala. She's Chamber Board Member and also a Health and Benefits Consultant with Broom Associates.